بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So the topic of discussion today is technology addictions and its impact on mental health. And I know appearances can be deceiving, but just to be very clear, regardless of how I look, I am not a mental health clinician. I am not a therapist or a counselor. So I'm not here to give you any medical advice. I am here to try and help you with some spiritual advice, inshallah, and to help give and shed some light on this subject, some misconceptions that do surround it. One of the first things that I did want to talk about is the role of mental health in the self, in the nafs, and how it is that we view it Islamically. And it's very important to understand that there are three types of health that we all have as individuals. The first of them being our physical health, how an individual is physically. It's very important that we maintain our bodies however they are. I understand that some of us have obesity issues, some of us have sugar issues, some of us have different types of issues. So it's very important to keep that balanced. It's very important to keep an eye on that and to keep our perspective on that. The second one is our spiritual health. Our spiritual health basically revolves around our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And lastly is our mental health. And as you can see, the Venn diagram I've put up here, all of these things have an effect on the other. There are elements that are mutually exclusive, but there are many elements that do represent and do have an impact on other parts of our health. If an individual has a good outlook on life, if somebody who is mentally healthy but physically ill, you will find that these people generally recover much quicker than somebody who is maybe clinically depressed. People who are spiritually healthy, people who have high iman, this again, it has an effect on their depression. So there are individuals who I know who are clinically depressed where they just want to sleep all the time, but they still have the ability to wake up for all of their salawat. So this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tests them with and something that they've succeeded with in overcoming those particular aspects of their clinical depression or their mental disorder. So technology addiction is a very broad term, and some have described it as a uncontrollable urge to use technological devices such as computers, smartphones, and gaming systems. What's interesting to note about this is that there is a stigma related to technology, and one of the things that you will not see on this list is television. So while studies have been done very intensively on different aspects and different types of technology, whether they be concerning computers or smartphones or iPads or different types of tablets, you don't find the same studies done concerning television, and a lot of it, I feel, has to do with the stigma that revolves around that. So technology addiction in and of itself, there is a strong relationship, as I will try to show, with other mental disorders. So there was a study that was done, I believe, within the past 10 years on 20 individuals who suffered from technology addiction. And as you can see on some of the numbers here, and I hope they're clear, that you'll find that every single one of those individuals suffered from some other mental health disorder. So it wasn't a technology addiction in and of itself. It was related to some other mental health disorder. 70% of them were diagnosed with bipolar disorder. 85% of them had previous mental health treatment. So you'll find that these individuals were not limited in these particular problems, and it wasn't just technology addiction alone that was the issue. So is excessive use of technology always a bad thing? And this answer is, it depends. It's not always a bad thing. I would say that there are two elements that we need to keep in mind. Number one is the type of person. So if this person is an extrovert, and a study was done on this, you will find that it increased their sense of well-being. In general, these people are more socially active. You will find that they had a more sense of fulfillment. And the reason for that, a lot of it has to do with the theory that the rich get richer, meaning that if somebody is rich, if somebody is well off, and you provide more avenues for that individual to invest his money, he's going to earn even more money. And the same thing happens with people who are extroverts. When you give them more social avenues, they become more social, and they will utilize those avenues for their benefit. So if you're an introvert, the opposite actually happens. These social avenues make it worse for that person. The second thing is, it depends on the type of activity that this person is involved in when we talk about excess. Is this person, you doing it for work? Is he doing it because he likes playing games? Is he doing it because he's trying to avoid a different activity, etc.? So these are the two elements that I think that we really need to keep in perspective when we talk about these things. There are signs of worry if an individual is involved or an individual feels that he's involved in some type of technological abuse. You will find that in general, heavy internet users, and this study was done in Taiwan. I believe there were about 50,000 students who took a questionnaire. So the results of this are pretty, I found them very impactful. So they said heavy internet users, they found in general to be more depressed, more physically ill, more lonely, and more introverted. While non-heavy users, they had better relationships, they had better grades, and they had better higher learning satisfaction. Now, what I do want to point out here is something that I had pointed out initially. Is it because these individuals who are heavy internet users, was it because that they had some type of clinical disorder? Was it because they had some type of mental disorder and this only exacerbated that? Or was it because of their use of the actual internet in and of itself? The other thing that we need to look out for is narcissism. This has become, or this has been, a very narcissistic culture in terms that we always want to push ourselves forward. We always want people to like us. We always want people to acknowledge us. We will always put our best picture forward. And there are many ways of pointing out and looking into this. And a lot of this has to do Islamically with our niyyah, with our intention. Our intention has to be pure whenever it is and whatever it is that we do. And we have to make sure that we do it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How this narcissism exhibits itself is different for different people and for different generations of people. So if you look at point 3 here, you can, the youth in general, they use Twitter. They use Twitter, and you'll find that this reinforces their narcissism or their narcissistic ideals versus the older generation who tend to use Facebook. There's Dr. Shiana. She actually mentions a number of problems that are associated with excessive technology use. A sedentary lifestyle, people who spend more time in the computer obviously move less. Vision issues, constantly looking at a screen, this has an effect on somebody's sight. People have injuries, whether it be carpal tunnel syndrome or other things, or sometimes because of distraction. They're not paying attention to what it is that they're doing, so while they're walking or while they're driving, they'll either get hurt or they'll manage to hurt someone else. Infections, so people who use shared computers, this is just a breeding ground for microbes. Social development, many people who have never interacted with actual people, it becomes a huge inhibition for them to interact with these different types of people because all they know is the screen that's in front of them. People are sleep deprived because they just become so obsessed with using that screen. And there are a number of psychological concerns, as we have mentioned previously. These are a list of questions that Dr. Shiana, she actually put forward, and as something that, I just want to give you guys a minute to maybe look at, and it's something we should really all ask ourselves. Do I suffer from any of these symptoms? Are these things something that affect me? So this is the first page. I'll give you guys a few seconds to go through this list and go ahead and read it. And here's the second set of questions that she also brings forward. So basically, if you answered yes to any of these questions, it doesn't mean that you are necessarily an addict. It just means that there are red flags that are important to be aware of. Again, this is the summary of a lot of what the studies that I had presented previously. That is technology addiction a mental disorder, or is it a symptom of another disorder? And wallahu alam, based on the previous research, I believe that it is just a symptom. I don't believe it is an addiction in and of itself. Whatever it might be, technology, internet, social media, however you want to describe it or whatever means you want to describe, it's not a problem in and of itself. And if you actually look at the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is in the 5th edition now, DSM-5, this is what psychologists use to actually diagnose people. None of these are listed as disorders in that. There is one disorder that is related to technology, which is called the internet gaming addiction, but this is the only one that is actually listed in that manual and something that psychologists refer to. And related to this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. How prosperous are the believers, those who pray humbly, who shun idle talk. And shunning idle talk and shunning laghu is something that we are all familiar with and something that we all know. So we need to understand that because it's a symptom of a problem, is utilizing technology, does that make the technology haram in and of itself? And I believe that this is a valid question. And we have to realize that people who have mental disorders or people who have mental health issues, they will self-medicate. They will self-medicate. And self-medicate basically means that I feel like I am suffering from a particular disorder, I'm suffering from a particular problem, so I'm going to utilize this item or I'm going to utilize this substance to help me deal with this disorder, this problem. So when I use the term self-medicate, that's what it means. And sometimes those means are halal. Sometimes people will consume a lot of food. I'm sorry? Did somebody say something? No? Okay. So sometimes those means will be halal. Sometimes those means will be halal. People will use food, people will watch TV. Binge watching is something that has become very common and is a way for people who suffer from certain types of depression or anxiety to kind of deal with that. Watching sports, some people, they exercise aggressively in order to deal with some of the problems that they deal and they face with. Social media obviously being another outlet. For others, they go take haram means. Some people will fall into substance abuse, whether that be alcohol or drugs. Some people will involve themselves in gambling, and others will involve themselves in pornography. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has very summarily discussed and told us that we cannot abuse anything, whether it be halal, even if it's halal. Even if it's halal. So obviously haram items are haram in and of it themselves, but if we abuse halal substances, at that point Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also forbidden that. He says, Ya bani Adam, khudhu zinatakum inda kulli masjid, wa kulu washrabu, wa la tusrifu, innahu la yuhibbul musrifin. That all children of Adam, dress well whenever you are at worship, and eat and drink, but do not be extravagant. Allah does not like extravagant people. We cannot have israf. We cannot be musrif when we are dealing with anything. Just because an apple is halal, it doesn't mean that I can eat 30 apples within an hour, right? It doesn't mean I can drink 2 gallons of milk. All of these things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made mubah for me. He's allowed all of these things, but I'm not allowed to be excessive in any of these things just because He Azza wa Jal has allowed them. So the question that will come to mind is, okay, is using technology laghu? Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to stay away from laghu. He's commanded us, saying that the individuals who have khashya in their salah, the individuals who give their zakat, these individuals, anil laghi mu'ridun, that these individuals, they stay away and they avoid laghu. Well, it depends. And this is a theme that we will see as I continue speaking, that there are many aspects and many factors that we do not keep in mind. And these are some things that I just want to bring to light for everyone. Firstly, it's important to understand what is laghu, what it is in and of itself, and I think that there's a big misunderstanding of how to define it and how to understand it. There are 2 major definitions for it. The first being speech that has no benefit. Speech that has no benefit is a very broad term. Sometimes it can be discussing sports. Some people are interested in the migration patterns of otters. It's just random things and random information that all of us have come across, and all of us maybe will look into, okay, who was the, support actor in that film. Just information that really has no benefit. Right? There's no benefit to that information at all. And the second type, which is evil speech, backbiting, lying, right, talking or making fun of individuals. And this is something that is clearly haram. So the speech that has no benefit in and of itself is mubah. So whatever it is that you want to discuss, whatever it is that you want to talk about, the asl or the foundational ruling on all of that speech is that it is halal, that it is mubah, and speech that is evil, that contains sinning or that is shirk, is impermissible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, La yu'akhidhukum Allahu bil-laghwi fi imanikum. Allah does not take you to task for what you are thoughtless for in your oaths, meaning that there's no kafara, there's no expiation for the individual who does laghu when he takes an oath. So if we said that laghu is something that is mubah, if we say that laghu is something that is jaiz, we cannot do israf in things that are mubah. And this is something that I had mentioned previously. So how do I determine that I have become excessive in my laghu? And this is something that is very important for every single one of us to understand. And there are 3 things that I had mentioned here that I think are very good delineators on how we can actually determine how have I crossed the line, have I crossed the boundary concerning laghu. And the first being that, okay, if I am doing this laghu, whether it be talking about sports or other things, have I now missed my prayers? Have I now let the time for fasting go and I'm delaying breaking my fast? Is it causing me to sin at this point? The second one, is it preventing me from fulfilling my social obligations? If I owe somebody money, if I was supposed to give time to my wife, I'm supposed to give time to my children, is it taking away from their rights? Because I myself have time for myself. And this is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed me. I am allowed to spend time with myself. It doesn't mean I have to give all of my time to my wife, to my children, to my work. It just means I have to be fair in the division of time that I do have and to make sure that everybody receives it. And lastly, civil obligations. Is it causing me to drive recklessly? Am I holding up lines at the airport or when I'm standing in line, at the ShopRite? Is it causing detriment to other people? Is it harming other people? Is it annoying other people, my use of this technology or my involvement in this laghu? So over here, I've just made a very quick chart on how to determine when is laghu acceptable. When is laghu acceptable? If it's haram, then this is something that we have to stop immediately. And it's very easy, very clear. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden backbiting, if He's forbidden lying, then we have to stop ourselves from performing those acts of laghu. If it's halal, if it's something that is mubah, then it depends, right? So if it is preventing me from fulfilling my responsibilities, whether they be to myself, to Allah, to my family, then again, I have to stop myself. And the last one, if I'm while performing this laghu, I'm still fulfilling all of the responsibilities that as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained on me, that my family wants from me, that my work wants from me, then at this point, you're more than welcome to continue enjoying whatever it is that you are doing, with the condition, again, that it is mubah, that it is jaiz. So the second category of discussion now is something called sadd al-dhari'a or sadd al-dharaya. Basically, someone will say, okay, technology in and of itself is not haram. Technology in and of itself is not haram, but it leads people to getting involved into online pornography, and it leads them getting involved into online gambling, and it leads them to learn about things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly prohibited. So shouldn't that be reason enough to prevent people from using the internet or using technology or their tablets or whatever it might be? So sadd al-dhari'a, and I think it's very important for me to explain what it is first and foremost. These are basically preventative or protective measures that the scholars have placed as a hukum, as a ruling for things to prevent people from falling into a greater evil or something that is clearly haram. Example, so going to a bar maybe in and of itself would not be haram. Going to the actual bar. Maybe I want to get somebody's, I'm meeting a friend there, or whatever the reason might be. Drinking the khamr, drinking the alcohol, this is something that is strictly prohibited. So the ulama have said, no, even going to the bar would be haram. Why? Because this is sadd al-dhari'a. It'll prevent an individual from falling to haram because there is a high probability or there's a high chance that he will actually consume alcohol, or maybe he'll get alcohol in his clothing, or there will be some other issue, or he'll get involved or he'll meet somebody who's drunk and he's going to have a confrontation with that individual. So this is just one example of sadd al-dhari'a. So can we say sadd al-dhari'a is a good means or a good method of preventing people from using technology? And like I said before, again, it really depends. It really depends. The problem with sadd al-dhari'a or sadd al-dharaya is how it is implemented. Because we have to understand that behind the implementation of sadd al-dhari'a is you have individuals. You have scholars who have decided that, okay, this action or this movement is something that is prohibited based on my understanding of sadd al-dhari'a. And because individuals are involved in that, you will always have a personal bias. And with this personal bias, you will always have people who will lean to a more conservative understanding, and they will lean toward making something haram, and you will have people who are more liberal, and they will lean to making that thing halal, saying that, okay, well, the end result is still not haram. So how is it that you make it haram? So it's very important for us to place a methodology. It's very important for us to put something in place that allows us to determine relatively objectively when can sadd al-dhari'a be used. So the best way, and Allah knows best, is to do case studies. And this means that I need to look at every single case, and I need to study every single case and look at percentages and look at outcomes of what happens when people are placed in these particular situations. And when I place these people in these particular situations, I will come up with a number. I will come up with a percentage. And that percentage will help me determine. It will help me determine as a scholar, as an imam, as somebody part of a fiqh council, that now this ruling has become eligible for me to make it a siddhattha, to make it a means to stop the people from falling into that particular sin. And I have given a few examples here. The first one being around people who smoke. Being around people who smoke. I myself don't smoke. Will me being around those people, does that bring people or bring more of an acclamation for that individual now to start smoking or not? Because being around people, halal, jaiz, mubah. There's nothing wrong with me being around other individuals, other human beings. But if I spend a lot of time around those people, what percentage of people actually start smoking? Right? This is a very valid question. If the number is 70%, 80% or higher, then at that point I would say no. Min bab, sadd al-dhari'a, from stopping the people of falling into haram, I would say that you are not allowed. It is not permissible now to hang around people who smoke. For example, the second example, sexual promiscuity or acclimacy of children who are raised in mixed gender schools versus gender specific schools. It's very important now because this is going to be a long-term study. We have children who have gone to separated schools their entire life. We have had children who have gone to mixed schools their entire life. What effect does that have on the outcome of these children? Do these children now, are they more inclined to be sexually active? Are they less inclined to be sexually active? Who is more promiscuous in this situation? And then this will help us determine which type of schooling will be better. Unfortunately, we're not doing studies like this. It's become very subjective, whatever the scholar feels, and I'm not blaming the scholars per se, but there are individuals who based on what they feel, they'll say this is sadd al-dhari'a and we have to stop it. So a very modern example of this was preventing women from driving, right? This is something, how was it that scholars from a particular region can make it impermissible for a group of women to stop driving? Their reasoning was, and if you had asked them, all of them will use this. They'll say sadd al-dhari'a, because it leads to a greater harm. Like, show me numbers. I need to see statistics. It's not good enough for me that you feel that way. I appreciate your feelings, don't get me wrong, but it's very important for me to see what are you basing that research off of? What are you basing that result off of? The chances of killing a Muslim if joining the US military. Again, a very valid question. There are people who want to join the US military, whether it be because of college benefits, whether it be because of experience, or by the time they get out and they finish serving. These individuals, it needs to break down to every single one of the armed forces. Is this person going into the ROTC? Is he going into the Army? Is he going into the Navy? Is he going into the Air Force? Is he going into the Reserve? What are the chances of this person now not only being deployed, because being deployed in and of itself, we're still not in an issue where it's a problem. You are now being deployed in a place where there is a high chance or a high probability that you will kill another Muslim. Is it permissible now? Because joining the army, again, like I said, in and of itself, jais, mubah, there's nothing wrong with it. But if this person is placed in a situation now where he is forced to kill another Muslim, this becomes haram immediately. Now, what are the chances of that happening? Again, a study needs to be done. In this way, we can determine, does sadd al-dhari'a apply here? The last example, again, something that is very relevant to the modern age, politically supporting the gay community. What are the repercussions of that? What are the repercussions of that? What has happened? What has happened now to the mentality of our youth? What has happened to the mentality of the adults? Because we've politically supported them. Nobody religiously supports them. And this is something that, I can stamp that, and I truly believe that. Nobody religiously supports them. But there is political support that is happening very largely from the Muslim community. Like, what are the repercussions? Show me the studies. Show me. What percentage now of our youth think that being gay is okay? And if you ask them, why is it that you feel that? Well, because I saw this person, and I saw this female, and I saw this person, and they were supporting the gay community, and I, as an individual, am unable to differentiate between political and religious support. Again, something very relevant. A study needs to be done. We need to see what effects do these things have, because at that point, I can then say, listen, 70% of our youth now think what they didn't think 10 years ago because of this new support. Min bab sadd al-dhari'a, it is haram to support the gay community politically. For example, But again, you need facts, you need numbers. We cannot just arbitrarily decide that this is siddhattha and this is not. So a very valid question will come up then, okay, why not just close most doors? Why not just say, okay, listen, siddhattha everything, we'll just close all these doors and we will not allow people to do anything, right? You know, you cannot drive because min bab siddhattha, you might commit zina with a woman, you know, because you're driving and you're taking your car out. Like, why not? You know, why don't we close these doors? How come I cannot take that step? Me as a scholar, I feel that these are practical and reasonable means for people to commit zina or to drink alcohol, etc. Why do I not make cars haram? Why do I not make driving haram, generally? There has to be some limitations, right? One of the limitations I mentioned, there have to be studies done. There have to be studies done to actually show that this leads to that. I need to see facts, I need to see numbers, I need to see statistics. The other problem is, and like I said, this is also problematic from two other angles. There's a very big spiritual problem that is behind this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَا تَصِفُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمُ الْكَذِبِ هَذَا حَلَالٌ وَهَذَا حَرَامٌ لِتَفْتَرُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبِ إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَفْتَرُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبِ لَا يُفْلِحُونَ. Do not say falsely, this is lawful and that is forbidden. Inventing a lie about Allah, those who invent lies about Allah will not prosper. And this is the spiritual danger behind this. That how is it that I can make something haram that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made haram, at least with proof. And this is what these facts, numbers, and statistics, they can give me supporting reasoning to say, yes, yeah, Allah, I can stand in front of Allah comfortably and say, yeah, Allah, I did this study, and this is the reason that I came to this conclusion. It's not that, yeah, Allah, I felt that, so I did it. Because that's not a good excuse. That's not a reasonable excuse. That's not a reasonable way to deal with these issues. Because this deen isn't about feelings. It's about nusus. It's about dalil. And those adillah, those proofs, they can come from different sources. And sometimes, as in this case, they can come from facts, figures, and statistics. The second problem is, personally, we already have restrictions in our religion. We already have restrictions in our religion. But those restrictions are meant to help us navigate. Those restrictions are meant to help guide us, right? It's kind of like pushing a mouse through a maze, guiding him so that he avoids those potholes and avoids those mistakes. This deen was not sent and it was not given to torture us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't give us Islam because He wanted to strangle us. He didn't put us in a place because He wanted to surround us with haram so that we can't do anything and we can't be functional members of society. I mean, just look at the progression of how things have moved here in the United States. I can't use examples of other parts of the world because I'm not too familiar with them. But how the scholars have dealt with, for example, taking loans out for going to school or going to college and higher education. The position scholars have taken in terms of purchasing homes and how those things have transformed. And I'm not saying that the haram things have become halal. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that as more information and proper research was done, this was the problem. There was a lack of proper research. There was some jur'ah. People pushed themselves forward and they allowed themselves to say something without actually sitting down and looking into and researching the issue. Should we have a spectrum of opinions Islamically? Yes, absolutely. So even though you have a good number of scholars, for example, that will say, listen, going to school, there's a big maslaha in it, there's a hajja amma, it is permissible for them to take a loan now to go to school and to go study in these educational institutes. You will still have a pocket of scholars say, no, essentially it is still taking a loan and it is not a darura, therefore it is haram. I have no problem with that. It's good to have a spectrum of opinions because one side will always be holding onto each other and we need to make sure we stay within that band. We don't want the conservatives to overpower the liberals and we don't want the liberals to overpower the conservatives. And here I'm talking about within a religious context, because people will always lean one way or the other. You will always have those diehard people who say we need that partition, and you always have those diehard people who say, hey, listen, as long as we sit separately, we're okay. And these are the type of people, this is what the ummah is. This is what the ummah is. We are a spectrum of opinions. We really are. It's just a matter of how we deal with those opinions and how to deal with them academically. So these mental health issues that we have, or these spiritual issues that we have, or these physical ones, it's very important that we put them in the correct light and we understand them appropriately. Because the other problem that I have seen in mental health is the stigma that's associated with it. Nobody will ever say to me, Farhan, you have the flu, your iman must be weak. Right? You won't hear anybody saying that. But if I say, hey, listen, I think I suffer from anxiety or depression, no, I think your iman is just weak. Why do we allow that stigma to happen? Why do we allow people to say that? Why is that appropriate? Now, is it possible that certain mental disorders or certain mental illnesses are far more exaggerated than what the ground reality is? Yes, absolutely. I really do believe that. The same way that sometimes we, as parents, will exaggerate our child's runny nose. When we see the runny nose in our child, he has the flu, I got to take him out for a flu shot, I'm going to take him to the emergency room. It's natural. People will exaggerate in whatever field that they are in. And I don't see that to be a fault. I just see that to be overly cautious. And it's very important to kind of reel those people in and bring them back down to the ground reality. So with that, I have about 9 minutes remaining. I would like to open up the floor, inshallah, to any relevant questions. Now, تفضل يا شيخ. Alaikum salam. Yeah, can we get a mic? Yes, let him finish, inshallah, and then we'll get to your question. In the meantime, تفضل. I'll try to hear.
Very interesting, the concept you brought up, which, the scholars are always the tools of usul, which is the Quran, Sunnah, Ijma', Qiyas, Masalih. And now you brought in the issue of experimentation. I'm coming from medical background, so you're going now subject their religious opinion to double-blind study in which people may be put in harm's way to find out if your opinion or their opinion is correct or not.
Yeah.
So I'll wait somebody to commit zina or commit whatever sin it is that's really very interesting, and I don't know what your comment is.
Okay, so the question is actually a very relevant one. How can we wait for people to sin before we perform a study? Yes, that's the basic and that's the essence of the question. My answer is people are already doing it. It's not it's not like I'm waiting for it to happen. It's already being done, and we have the information available. We have the people available. It's not like, okay, hey, let's figure out in the next 10 years, are people going to commit zina because they're going to a gender-specific school? No, kids are already committing zina. It's already happening. It's a matter of studying what has passed, not what's going to happen. Does that make sense? Partially. Okay, alhamdulillah. Yes.
الله سبحانه وتعالى يقول في القرآن الكريم ولا تقربوا الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن.
Yeah,
we need to discuss this ayah and how to use technology in a safe way for our children. In my opinion, every parent is responsible of having some sort of
oversight.
Yes, oversight or protection. Like for example, having something to suppress the pornographic stuff on the internet. So if you can shed some light on this.
Okay, so there are a number of tools that we can use as parents to protect us. So one of the things that I use personally, when I want my kids to watch a movie, for example, there's a website called Kids in Mind. It's a very well done website. They'll actually list the number of sexual interactions that happen in a movie, if at all. And this is a good way that I use to judge what it is that my children can watch. Another way is actually sitting down and watching movies with them. That's a great way of spending time with children, and it's a good way to spend family time. There are many ad blockers, many VPNs that we can use in our own homes to make sure that these types of advertisements aren't making it into the home. But we as parents, we need to be very vigilant and to make sure that these things don't happen. Saying that, I can do all of this in my home, but this little window that my child has, it's available to him at school too. The better thing to do, and I'm not saying don't do those things need to be done, absolutely. But in addition to that, our children, their Islamic character needs to be developed. Our children should not be shy to say no, because there will be a point, and I can almost guarantee this from the time our children are between 4th grade and onward, that they will see some type of pornographic image. They will. And it's a sad reality. But what our child does when he or she sees that, this is what I need to worry about. Is he going to come and tell me? Is he going to look away? Is he going to say, don't show me those things? These are the kind of characteristics we need to build in our children, because the reality is we can build a castle, right? And I can put a moat around it. And I can prevent any type of electricity from coming into my home, let alone internet. But our children will go outside. And it is their Islamic identity outside that worries me more than what they're doing in their homes. Wallahu a'lam. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So making our children confident. We as an immigrant community, we do not praise our children. When they have an accomplishment, we don't say, I'm proud of you. When they do something, we don't say, I'm glad you did that. I like the decision that you made. Are you sure that's the right decision? Instead of building our child's character, we tend to break it down. 97, where'd the other 3 points go? Right? I mean, and it's very unfortunate that this happens. And I get it. You want to set that standard and you want to set that bar. That's great. I'm all for you. But we need to recognize our children's achievements. Because if we don't build their character, then you know what's going to happen? They're going to run to their peers. Because their peers will build their character for them. And every person in this room will find a cheerleader. Everyone. And they're going to cheerlead me whether I'm doing something wrong or whether I'm doing something right. Our children need to know that they can come and talk to us whenever they want to about anything. My son, he came home, he was in 4th grade, and they showed him a video about communicable diseases, and in passing, they mentioned HIV. My 4th grader. He came home, and he said to me, he said, Baba, what's HIV? I was like, all right, just give me a minute to breathe. But I will answer your question, I promise. So I said to him, I was like, listen, this is a disease that passes usually between people who don't get married, and it happens between a man and a woman. And I'm going to talk to your school. So the thing I was happy about was that he came and he was open and he communicated that to me. He didn't ask his friends. And this is one of the things, so I teach some of the high school kids and some of the college. I was like, listen, if you have any questions, I don't care how perverted the question is, come to your parents or come to me. Do not ask your friends and do not ask Google. Because there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and we cannot shelter our children. We can't. Because it's just worse for them. I like to say that we need to have controlled exposure. We need to make sure and see what it is that our children are watching. We need to sit down with them because they will see inappropriate things. But when I see something inappropriate, if I see a woman who's not dressed appropriately or whatever, and I'm staring at her and my son is looking at me, he's learned something. So we need to make sure that we can control ourselves so that we set a good example for our children and keep those lines of communication open. Allahu Akbar. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, so I'm sorry, just to clarify, technology can have an effect on your mental health. It's not a separate dimension in and of itself. Yeah.
So my question to you is, as a faqih or a scholar, what tools should one have to be able to tackle such a diverse issue?
He needs to have the faqih himself?
Whoever it is that's going to be the subject matter expert in trying to bridge the gap between
Okay, so what happens with the faqih, it's not possible he knows everything, correct? So what he needs to do, what the faqih needs to do, is he needs to bring in people from the appropriate fields that he needs, and they will explain to him the results of whatever studies that are done. Then the faqih can make an informed decision. Easy example. When fasting, an individual, he doesn't know because of health reasons whether he can fast or not. The mistake that many of us make is we go to our doctor. We go to our doctor and we ask him, hey, can I fast this Ramadan? Yes? My question, this general physician, his specialty is medicine. Is he a faqih? No. The faqih, how does he get involved in this relationship? How does he get involved in this? All right, this is the question. The faqih needs to tell the patient, Go ask your doctor, what are the effects of me fasting? What is going to happen to my body if I fast? Then that information can come to the faqih, and now he can make an informed decision. Because the fatwa is in his hands, it's not in the doctor's hands. Yes? No, tfadal. Over time? Okay. Sorry. طيب جزاكم الله خير الله يحفظكم والله أعلم وصلى الله على خير خلق نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. I think you guys have me for a speaker's corner, right? Yes. Yeah, okay. So speaker's corner, I'm usually the lone guy sitting at the table. More than welcome to ask, inshallah. أهلا وسهلا. May Allah bless you all.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم